I checked the pager and was all too aware of my rapidly beating heart. I was in love with my guardian, and I didn't know how it happened. I willed myself to push the thought aside, and instead focused on the text message. It was sent by Gizmo, who asked me to meet with him about something. Curious as to what he wanted to discuss, I placed the phone in my pocket and walked down the hall. A million thoughts sped through my mind, like cars driving down a highway. With all the difficulties from the present mission and my inner turmoil that pressed down on me, I was surprised that I was still able to hold my shit together. I stepped inside what was the makeshift medical bay. Gizmo was lying on the bed and busily typed away on his laptop. I couldn't help but chuckle at his frantic movement. As I paid close attention to his movements, I noticed that his right arm was bandaged up in a thick white cloth. A slight ping in my chest reminded me of our close encounter with the phantoms. "Hey," I said in greeting. "How are you feeling?" The tech expert didn't even look up when he replied.
"Wound is just superficial. Bloody phantom shot me as I drove away."
I winced a bit, but otherwise didn't react. "Well, what have you got for me, Gizmo?" I asked, wanting to change the subject. It snapped him out of his frantic haze, for he looked up at me solemnly.
"I was just checking out our camera feed. Had something interesting came up. Look."
He turned his laptop screen to face me. As I knelt down, Gizmo pressed play, and various camera footages played simultaneously. One particular video caught my attention, just like what Gizmo said would happen. I leaned forward to get a better view. The footage showed a cloaked figure just outside of a van. A loud bang went off, which must have been when Gizmo was shot. The figure then got smaller as the van drove off.
"That's the bugger who shot me,"
Gizmo commented bitterly.
"Pay attention, though. You'll notice this soon enough."
I nodded and glanced through each footage that was shown. As Gizmo replayed the video, I noticed that the figure opened the van's back door just before Gizmo drove off. The phantom seemed to have been looking for something. "Look!" I exclaimed. "What was he doing?" Gizmo rewinded the clip.
"I don't know,"
he replied.
"Maybe he wanted to see if he could steal from us."
"I don't think so. Whatever he was looking for wasn't in the van," I said.
"Maybe he was just messing with me. The phantom loved to mind-fuck their enemies."
My brows furrowed as I thought of an explanation behind the phantom's unusual behavior. Suddenly, it felt like a light bulb went off in my head as the puzzle pieces came together. That bitch. Gizmo turned to face me completely, and looked at me as if I grew another head.
"I beg your pardon,"
he said indignantly. I shook my head. "Not you. When Fear and I were in the tunnel, we overheard some of the phantom agents talking about a woman." Gizmo just stared at me before turning his attention back to the laptop.
"Could it be that they were looking for our prisoner?"
"I believe so," I replied. The familiar beep of my phone snapped me out of my focus, and I took it out. My heart accelerated in anticipation as I read the message. "Gizmo, tell everyone to meet in the conference room." I was already out the door before the tech expert could reply. About 10 minutes later, my team and I were gathered in the conference room. The video image of the head warrior was on display.
Agent Moore, your findings are being evaluated. It is extremely rare for a phantom agent to be caught alive, and apparently willing to cooperate from what you've told me. I'm sure you can imagine just how much these Seekers can gain by having these agents in our hands.
Of course, I agreed. When do you want us to hand her over?
A team of warriors has already been sent to come pick her up. A medical squad will be coming by as well to pick up Agent Delta's mother.
Understood,
John replied. What are we to do in the meantime? I asked.
Our interrogators are still busy with Mr. Hill, but we're certain that he'll crack soon enough. Till then, enjoy your brief time off duty.
Thank you, sir, I replied respectfully. The head warrior nodded.
I'll contact you when I have more information. Pete out.
I leaned back as the screen went black. I turned to face my teammates, and saw mixed reactions. Olsen seemed like he didn't know what to do with his free time. Elvira was more than pleased, if the smile on her face could be trusted. Fear looked bored out of his mind, and Predator appeared distressed. I looked at him in curiosity. "Austin, what's wrong?" Said person seemed surprised at my usage of his real name, but didn't comment on it.
It's nothing, Agent Moore. It's just that I don't think that the Seeker should take Diana.
I raised an eyebrow. "You do realize that she's a Phantom agent. Therefore she's our enemy."
Yeah, I know that. Everywhere I go, I'm reminded of the war. It's just that she's not like them. You've seen her yourself. She was forced to do what she did.
I looked at him in confusion. "Austin! This is the woman that subjected you to horrific experiments. Against her will or not, she still tortured you, and she still belongs to the Phantoms. How can you try to justify what she did?" Predator shook his head.
You don't understand, Agent Moore. I'm more than aware of what she did to me. She still saved my life, though. I at least owe that to her.
He then stepped forward.
Agent Moore, if the Seekers take her, she'll be treated as a prisoner of war. Nothing good will happen to her.
I quietly reflected on what he said. Diana was indeed different than other Phantom agents, but she was still a Phantom. "I'm sorry, Pred. It's not my call to make. We've got our orders and we have to follow them." I gave him a stern look. "Let me remind you of something, though. We are in the middle of a war. Prisoners of war are a fact, and there's nothing you can do about that. This woman is a Phantom agent, through and through. I don't care that she had a change of heart. I won't allow your pity for her to cloud your judgment. As a Seeker agent, you should know where your loyalty lies." For a moment, Predator stood speechless at my directness. His mouth opened and closed several times before his brown eyes darkened with acceptance. He nodded tensely.
I understand.
I hummed in acceptance. "Good. Now go get some rest. This war won't be stopped in a day." Predator nodded wordlessly and brushed past me. I watched him walk by before I turned my attention back to the others. Fear shook his head in disapproval.
"He always wore his heart on his sleeve. That's going to get him killed someday."
I sighed. "We can't blame him for that." The assassin shrugged.
"Maybe not. But as you said, we're at war. Pity and compassion isn't going to bring the Phantoms to their knees. Instead, it'll just make it easier for them to screw us over."
"That's some positive thinking there," I thought in bitter sarcasm. I rubbed my eyes. "Well, I'm going to get some rest. Stay alert for those 2 secret teams we've been expecting." Elvira and Fear both nodded, and I took that as my cue to find a quiet place to take a nap. True to Pete's word, a team of 4 warriors arrived within an hour. The leader of the group approached me.
"Agent Moore, we've come to escort your prisoner to a secure location."
I nodded and led him to the room where Diana was kept. It was strange, associating a name with a Phantom agent. We arrived at the door, and the guard on site unlocked it for us. The warriors and I stepped inside the cramped room. The Phantom woman looked up blankly, apparently not at all intimidated by the muscular men that surrounded her. I spoke out. "Diana, you are to be sent to a secure location where you will assist the Seekers in any way they need. I'll pass on the message for you to be treated well." The older woman merely raised a thin eyebrow, but didn't say anything. I looked over at the warrior. "If you don't mind, I'd like to have 5 minutes with her alone." The lead warrior nodded, before he and his team stepped out of the room. Once the door was shut, I knelt in front of the woman. She observed me with cool calculation. "Those Phantom agents were after you, weren't they?" I commented after a moment. The Phantom woman nodded.
"They knew of my intentions."
I hesitated. "What would they have done with you if you were captured?"
"Kill me on the spot."
The woman replied bluntly. My brows furrowed as I stayed quiet. A small smile wrinkled on the Phantom's worn face.
You don't have to force yourself to feel pity for me. I did what I did, and I cannot change who I am. I just hope to redeem myself this once before I let fate play its role on me.
I nodded, then walked over to the door and opened it. I gestured my head towards the Phantom Woman. She's all yours. The lead warrior nodded and then stepped forward.
Please come with us.
He said politely, but with a stern tone. Wordlessly, the Phantom Woman stood up and allowed the warriors to put another set of handcuffs to her slender wrists. I mentally made a note to remind the Seekers to feed her properly. As they walked out of the room, the Phantom Woman turned to glance at me.
I wish you luck on your mission, Seeker,
she said hoarsely. With that, the warriors escorted her down the narrow hallway. I felt a bit confused as mixed emotions swirled within me. I almost felt sad that she was gone. I could understand Predator's reservations. Diana was indeed different than the others of her kind. It was a pity that things turned out the way they did. I shook my head. There was no point in feeling upset about something that I couldn't control. I turned around and made my way to my room. I needed time to think things over.